Well, hello to everyone out there in the Matrix. For the third time today, I am doing a live stream. This live stream is going to be a tarot card reading relating to the song by Bob Dylan, 2020 Murder Most Foul. I'm not exactly sure what's going to come up in this reading because after listening to that song a few times, I can say that without a doubt, he was referring to JFK in the beginning of the song. But as the song went on, I get the distinct impression that he was also referring to world events now. But at the time of that recording, it was possibly in the future. More than meets the eye with Bob Dylan. For anybody that is familiar and knows how to implement Chinese facial reading, you can look at an image of Bob Dylan and tell a lot. And I happen to have had an interest in ancient Chinese facial reading, and looking at his face, I was able to tell a lot from it. Very psychic person he is. So, anyways, I've already shuffled the cards with the query asking what what was the message in Bob Dylan's song um, "Murder Most Foul." I'm not sure what's really going to come through on this, since I know that he was definitely talking about JFK, but also when he was recording that, it had to do with a futuristic thing. But anyways, I got the cards shuffled. I cut them with the quarry relating to that song, and so I'm going to jump right into this. First card I pull, the Devil card. So what I'm seeing here, and if you can see this image and it focuses in, do you see the two figures below the devil, and they're in bondage? This song is saying that that event in November of 1963 with JFK, this was connected with very dark forces. Um, Call it the devil, call it Satan, call it whatever you want. But the two figures below the devil, they're in chains, they're in bondage, um, indicating that even at that time, 1963, humanity was already in a state of bondage. And it's hard to move away from this card. It's I'm getting from this card that this goes back way. This is like going back. Um, it's not thousands of years. It's not tens of thousands of years. This this is like, I'm getting the impression this is like billions of years or countless years. It just goes way back. This bondage of this Satan, this devil, this entity. I'll pull another card here. So this card is the Queen of Wands. First thing that caught my attention was the black cat right at the bottom of this card. So at the beginning of the song, Murder Most Foul, obviously talking about JFK, excuse me, while there were while there were agents within this country that carried out this diabolical murder of a human being and implemented that, the orders came from another country abroad. Mm, and I'm it's coming through here, Switzerland, for what it's worth. Um, that's what I'm picking up with that. Um, pull another card. So this is the Four of Pentacles. So they're knowing the the grip, and let me just back up. Pentacles often refer to money, finance, and there is most people that know anything about anything knows about Switzerland and finance. This is like a a grip on finance, and this is still relating to the first part of that song with JFK, and it has to do with finances. It has to do with Switzerland, and looking at this card, standing on two of the coins, holding one of them. Pay attention to the way that this figure is holding this uh, coin in the center, and notice the coin on top of this figure's head, which what I'm picking up would be the crown chakra. JFK, prior to his murder, he he was more than meets the eye. His essence was more than meets the eye, and he had information coming from the ether, which I'm thinking is the crown chakra, which connects you to the spirit, the source. So JFK was relating to finances, knew, um, like with a connection, um, not necessarily anything, not necessarily information that he would be getting from an earthly sense, but this information was coming from a higher source through the top, through the crown chakra. Pull another card here. This card is death, the number 13. You know, I'm getting very strongly from this card revolving around JFK's murder is that JFK knew that this was very likely, um, that he was going his life was going to be ended for things that he had already been mentioning in press conferences prior. And this card is, there's so much going on in this card. In the short time from his murder in the limousine, and I'm getting a very strong impression fast forwarding to once they were on the airplane. If it was called Air Force One back then or something, I don't know, but the airplane that they got on, the there were people that implemented this murder was there on that airplane with Jackie Kennedy and the body of JFK. The people that implemented this murder, this assassination, were present on that airplane. And I'm getting a distinct feeling that there is one in particular individual that, should one go back and look at those old clips, which many of them are images, but they can still be found. But there is a male figure in these images that is kind of standing off to the side of the photograph, but is still in the photograph and is very key to it. This and I'm also getting that this is the the precise timing of this photo was the photo of when the swearing in of the new president, which would have been the vice president. It was in that snapshot, that image. And this male figure, while was not necessarily, when this image was taken, was not necessarily the focal point, but this male was in the photo and kind of off to the side. I have to go back and look at that photo because I'm curious about that. But there's a male in that photo totally involved in that murder and orchestrating that and implementing it. he is in that photo, not the primary focus of the photo, but nevertheless still in that image and standing kind of off to the side. This card, I'm stuck on this card. There is so much, absolutely so much going on in this card here. There is there were and to go back a little bit prior to this assassination, um, there were many agencies involved in this, which is kind of common knowledge, I think, by these days. But besides the government type agencies, the local law enforcement in Dallas, Texas was very involved in the orchestration of this murder. And though those at the higher levels of the law enforcement in Dallas, Texas at that time, I'll say. I'll pull another card here. This card is the Knight of Cups. So in this card, this knight is coming through as they're at on that date in November 1963. There was a war, a hidden war that was started, and and I and based on this card here, the cup that this knight is holding is empty. This what they did on that day in November 1963, it moved everything back to what JFK was attempting to do, and it actually made a speech a couple weeks prior, um, regarding the Federal Reserve of the United States. But that day, and this card is showing with that cup being empty, that they cut that completely off what JFK's endeavors and what he was attempting to do. They put a stop to it. Pull another card here. And again, this, you know what? That old saying, money is the root of all evil. This is the seven of pentacles. Again, money, pile of money there. Um, Having to do with the Federal Reserve and what Kennedy had gone on national TV a couple of weeks ago and mentioned about the Federal Reserve. Um, After this card showing that it was stopped, this card is showing that it was in fact stopped, and those powers that be retain the death grip on the financial, global financial industry. So this card is the Magician card that focuses in. So this is still stuck on the the timing of that day on November of 1963 and what transpired and how that assassination, that murder was carried out. The Magician card, this is telling me that there was there was deception involved in this Lee Harvey Oswald and the Pansy story, and I've heard that this he was MK Ultra mind control. There's something about this that this is an illusion, that because he was prominent in that and was obviously uh, the one suspected of doing this, but there is a lot of the reason it's coming up the Magician is because they put everybody's focus towards that individual, Lee Harvey Oswald, I believe was his name. But this is where the magic comes in, is that it actually, the murderers were others. And it's coming through on this card that, like, we were told over and over and over, and of course they repeated this over and over about this grassy knoll, um, and the grassy knoll and a tower and shots coming from different directions. I'm getting from this card that there had something to do with a low flying aircraft, a helicopter, or a small Cessna or something that was flying in that vicinity where the shots came from different directions. It even actually possibly more than one aircraft, but the grassy knoll thing and that tower is not coming through so heavily in this card. Or actually, it's not coming through at all. It is actually coming through as some kind of aircraft, mm, like I said, a helicopter or a Cessna, more than one at different locations that would have been um, flying over the route of that motorcade. I'll pull another card here. So this is the sun card that focuses in. So this card is actually moving forward now into the future, and I have a feeling this is what I was picking up in the song by Bob Dylan, moving forward now, possibly into the present. And y'all, mentioned this in another video about the sun having a corona, and we know about the CV now, which is a corona. And for some that may not know, and is definitely coming through this card, this this corona, the sun, is indicating, it is indicating a new beginning, a new world, like a new, I hate to say the word because it's so common, but a new world order. This is ushering in a new world. I'll just leave it like that. I could read a lot into that card, but I'm going to move on to the next one. Ooh, we have justice. This is the justice card. This came up in a reading the other day. So this card is coming through that there is an attempt to balance the justice and make, mm, something to do with the bad guys, and trying to get that into order, and create balance and justice. However, in this card, and this might be reversed on you, but the scales are in the left hand, which is generally for receiving, and the sword is in the right hand, which is generally for giving. So I'm getting from this card, while there is an attempt to create a sense of justice from these many wrongdoings, the sword in the right hand is saying to me that this will not happen easily, even if it was to happen. There's another way of saying it. these dark forces are not going to go down without a fight. Okay, so this next card is the Page of Pentacles. The page is the messenger, pentacles, money, finance. So we are still have moved now into the present and extending into the near future. Um, Finances in general for the masses of the world, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that great. Pull another card here. Another Page of Cups. This one also came up the other day. Page of Cups. Still a messenger. So this page is holding a cup. It does have a fish in it, so it does indicate some bounty. Um, but this bounty isn't necessarily for the masses. It's for a few people, but it's not for the masses. Gosh, this Page of Wands. I shuffled these cards really good. The Page of Wands. So there is there is some kind of dealings going on, and I am getting a strong impression of Saudi Arabia that there is. Let me just put it this way: there are a lot of world leaders that are in constant contact virtually daily with Saudi Arabia. I want to do a crossing card on that one. Wow. This is the Eight of Swords. Notice how she's bound. This figure is bound and blindfolded and all these swords. This is a crossing card that I'm putting on the Page of Wands. And it's influencing in opposition. Whatever whatever this communication that is going on with many of the world leaders with the country of Saudi Arabia, there's something to do with uh, binding, even more binding the world population. It's something to do with that, and the blindfold on this figure's eyes is we as regular people are certainly not being made aware of this. It is hidden from us, and we're not supposed to see what is. whatever it is that is transpiring, negotiated for Saudi Arabia, we are not supposed to know. And there is a lot. I mean, since this is the Eight of Swords, since this is the Eight of Swords, there is a lot of power, and this power is aggressive. It is very, very, very aggressive. And the number eight being never ending, a never ending cycle is indicating to me that this has happened before. Um, and not necessarily in our recent timeline, but has happened prior. But all of those swords indicate that whatever's being negotiated there in Saudi Arabia with other world leaders is stealth and aggression and with total disregard for human life. I think I'm gonna do another card. This is wearing me out. This next card is the Knight of Swords, headed to battle. Probably really wouldn't even have to say anything to anybody about that. We're being told daily that we are in a state of war, and this card is definitely saying that there is a that there is a battle happening. The Knight of Swords. So, two opposing forces doing battle. We're not hearing about this because our focus has been diverted to something else, but there is two opposing forces at battle currently. So this next card is the Hermit. This card is coming through. First thing that came to my mind was wise and shining light on this. There is an attempt to shine light on this whole perspective of what is happening across the earth right now. And it's hmm, very interesting. In this card, don't ask me why, I just say what comes through. Antarctica is coming through this card. Antarctica. Go figure. I might pull one more card here. So this is the Six of Wands. The Six of Wands right here. Six of Wands. See what time we at. Ooh, almost 40 minutes. Okay. Mm. So, y'all know me. I'm not always the bearer of good news. almost never, right? Whatever. Uh, this this duel that is going on currently between two opposing forces, the the invisible enemy, they are collecting their strength and mobilizing and are very strong and very, very powerful. And soon, I think that we are going to, let me rephrase that. When you get into shadow governments and these dark forces, we do not always hear about this, but there is about to be push, a, a pushback against what is trying to be accomplished now by others, the other side. But this shadow, invisible enemy, they are mobilizing in a very powerful way. So I'm going to end it on this card here. This is the 6 of Pentacles, and notice what is happening in this card, and notice in which hands the scale is being held and the coins are being dispersed. And notice the figures groveling on the ground on their knees. That goes back, to about the middle of this reading where, excuse me, it is, they're going to be throwing out some coins to the peasants, and very strongly coming through this card, in order to get these coins, and I'm using that coins as reference to monies, is that you would have to be subservient in order to get that. And the reason I say that is, if you notice how these figures are basically down on their knees, um, it would be indicating that they have to be subservient. Another thing that I want to point out about this card is, if you look at the scales, they aren't balanced. So, yeah, having done this reading, I'm going to go back and re listen to that song by Bob Dylan and see if it makes sense to it. Because when I'm doing these readings, it's almost like I don't really grasp it. And it's very strange too, because after I do a reading, I don't necessarily remember it. Sometimes somebody will mention something to me, and then I will remember it. But for some reason, when I do these readings, I do not recall that. I don't retain necessarily what comes up. So while it's still fresh on my mind, when I end this live stream, I'm going to re listen to that song and see if there are any correlations with this reading that personally would pick up on. Anyways, that is it for this reading, and I hope that everybody stays safe and be diligent and pay attention to what you hear and what you see. I think that's very important right now. Anyways, that is it, and I am ending this transmission. Blessings to all.